Hello and welcome to Feel and Act Money. My name is Maria and I am the co host of this new podcast together with Danusia. This is a podcast for expats and it's all about money, making the right decisions wherever you are with your money. And we want to bring you both the emotional and the practical side of money decisions. Just a small highlight, we're not financial advisors, but we're both passionate about a financially educated society. And so we're here to share our experiences, anecdotes, tools, tips on how we have experienced money in different parts of the world. In this first episode of Feel and Act Money, our focus is going to be on the first moves we make when moving somewhere, the first money moves. But since you don't know us, and this is probably the first time you're hearing us for some of you, we're first going to introduce ourselves briefly so that you know who's here talking to you, bringing you these tips and stories. So I'm going to hand over the microphone to Nusia for her to share a bit of who she is and why she's excited to do these together with me.
Yes, thank you, Maria. It's so nice to be here with you doing this project. As Maria said, this is the first episode, so let me introduce myself. My name is Danusia. I'm from Brazil. My main language is Portuguese, and I live in Tallinn, Estonia now, so I most use English to communicate here. And I also lived in the US for a while. I lived in Germany. I work in a mega project in Africa for some time, specifically in Angola. And I'm passionate about the topic of education. I was the first person of all generations in my family to go to college. And then I study business, and I'm not a financial advisor, but I'm passionate about finances and about educating people. And that's why we are here to discuss and also to bring into the money topic that connects so much with people's stories, a lot of experience about living abroad. So now Maria can tell a little bit about her as well, right?
Yeah. So, a fun fact, Lucy and I both met here in Tallinn in a business community of women. And when we both learned we were passionate about the same topic from kind of two different sides of one coin, the emotional and the practical side, we decided to give it a try. So, we really hope you would like this. Give us feedback, send us questions. We'll be sharing contacts and where you can keep an eye on the next episodes at the end of the episode, but keep up with us. So, yes, we're both from the other side of the world. I'm originally from Venezuela, but also living here in Tallinn, Estonia. I've lived here for 17 years, so this is home for me now. And before that, I lived in Poland. And just like Danusia, I have a very different background. We've done a little bit of everything. I've been a teacher, product manager, now financial mentor. And I'm also passionate about education. So that's what we want to do here. We want to educate you about money and how it's just a tool that you can learn to manage. And yes, there's a lot of emotions and a lot of taboo around it, but we hopefully will not have any taboos here and we'll say it like it is. Just very briefly related to the topic so that you can see how our experiences touch into these money first moves, right? My
Yes.
first move was to Poland. And the thing is, when I moved there, I had no work experience. I mean, I had just graduated university and I was doing a small job as a teacher to get some pocket money. But moving to Poland meant a lot of different things for me. Independence in its biggest meaning, because I was living abroad for the first time, alone for the first time. And it was the first time that I was going to get a salary and decide what to do, from the most basic thing as to find a room to rent and buy groceries and all kinds of things. And in the years that I've lived in Estonia, my relationship with money has shifted tremendously. I come from a country with hyperinflation. Venezuela's inflation has been through the roof. There's a lot of monetary control. It's really difficult to understand because it's a system that really doesn't work. And Estonia is the complete opposite of that. Everything is super efficient, everything is digitalized. You almost never see cash. So you even forget cash is a thing.
Oh, yeah.
And so, yeah, that has shaped my story tremendously. And hopefully, we'll be sharing some of that along the way. But yeah, enough of us. You have an idea of who we are, what we do. Let's dive into the topic. So, as we said, we're going to be talking money first moves. And before we get there, I want to acknowledge that moving abroad is a very big deal. Not everybody does it. It's a very stressful situation. And there's a piece of information that I updated because I had read about this when I first moved almost 2 decades ago, which is that 96% of the world population lives where they were born. That means that 4% only, it's actually less than 4%, are migrants. And not all of those migrants are people like you and I who chose to move, but rather they have been forced migrants. They have to move because they had to move because of war, climate changes, or whatnot. So there's a very small percent of the population who decides to do what we did, which is let's just go live somewhere else and work somewhere else. And so I guess that makes us a little bit weirdos
Adventures.
or adventurers, yes. And so if you are listening to this episode and you're one of those expats, I hope this makes you feel special.
Yes, we are.
Yeah. Um, so let's move into the practical aspect. That's your thing, Danusia, of our first money moves, right? One of the first things that we can share with people, um, you know, based on what we've learned and what we did well, but also from our mistakes. And that would be, what are some of the things you think anyone that is moving abroad has to decide? What are some of the steps that you would recommend they take when they're moving abroad, regardless in regards to their money, right?
Oh, yes. Good question. Very good question. When I move abroad, I had already kind of planned what to do because I applied for exchange program. And yes, I have to read a lot about the community who was already living in the country I was supposed to move to, which was the US. So I looked first for people who spoke my language, Portuguese, and a lot of Brazilians were there and asked them a lot of tips. I learned that even though a family would host me, I wouldn't need a contract for my culture. This is something shocking. Like, I will live at someone's house, you should ask for the contract. Am I being polite? But it was a normal thing. So I took a lot of time to learn and listen to these people who were already there. That saved me a lot of trouble. And in terms of money, actually, once I moved there, okay, it's a new currency. You kind of learning what to do, where to buy things. You ask people around. But what got my attention as a very practical person, sorry, was the taxes. So I got there and I realized after just some time that I was already there that I should save money for taxes, but nobody told me this before. And there was a lot of opinions around the topic as well, and I decided to look for the true source, which is usually connected to the government, the
Mm-hmm.
Department of Taxes, read through, understand. So then I saved money to pay my taxes. But I do know a lot of people who didn't prepare for this, and then when the debt comes, usually it's a lot of money, and it's different from our culture sometimes, because in Brazil I would get paid and what was in my bank account, I didn't need to worry about what was there because the government would take the taxes already in advance. The company would pay the government and so on. Being an exchange student, I should be aware that I should do my taxes. And even though I was earning some money part time, I should prepare for this moment of paying taxes for the United States, which is really important for them as well. And yes, if I can tell some people who are traveling abroad first, look for some people who are already there. At the time, I used the Facebook groups, but you can find it online in any social media you have, and learn about the system, how works the culture, and then go also to the source of truth in the government websites, read through, learn, so then you don't have surprises later. Because
Mhm.
for me, I didn't even know there were differences between people who were tax resident and people who were foreigners. But even foreigners needs to pay taxes, and it's differ from people who are citizens. It's a lot in this topic, and
Mhm.
for me, once I saw this gap, I was like, I need to fix it.
Yeah, yeah.
I need to go straight to that. What
Mhm.
about you? How was it for you?
So, taxes was something I wasn't thinking about at all, right? Because the first thing for me was overall settling. As I mentioned, I was leaving my parents' home, I was leaving my home country. And so everything was 100% new. And I was in a much more of a basic place compared to your experience, right? So I never asked myself those questions in Venezuela. So I was doing a job for a few months. I did my internship as well before I finished university, but I never got to the point where I was living independently there. So I didn't have to think about those things. So for me, the most basic thing was the currency, right? How much is everything worth it? I'm going to live in a new place. How much do I have to pay? Is the salary that I'm going to get in this internship? So, similarly to you, I went with a program and that makes it easier. I know some people actually go without anything. And so you have to do a lot of research beforehand. So, part of the research that I did was supported by the fact that I had siblings that had moved abroad and they gave me some tips. They were not in the same country, but they had a similar experience. Also, the fact that I was going with an organization gave me access to this group of people that also supported you. So there was a whole community to welcome me. I actually stayed in the family house of a girl who had also done an internship in Venezuela. So she was a Polish girl living in Venezuela. And by the time I went to Poland, she was already back in her home and I could stay with them. So these, of course, made it all very easy. But when I think about what I was worried about, it was all very fundamental things. When will I get my first salary? Is the amount of money that I came with enough to last me before I get my first salary? Because there were two things, right? One is not like my parents were sort of swimming in money. So they gave me an amount of money that also, second layer, the government allow you to take abroad. So there was this currency control, and it still is there, and I couldn't take more. So first is the thing of do you have that amount? And second is if you have it, how do you know that it's going to last? So you have two options. You took cash and you took a credit card. I didn't have a credit card. My parents kept that to themselves. And so they just gave me the cash that the government allowed me to take abroad. And so for me, it was all about doing that math. And so back in the day, I remember using an app called Numbeo, a website where people basically put in the data of what everything costs in the place where they live. So you can compare cities. And that was very useful back then because I could compare, like, okay, if here transportation costs here and there it costs that, and I'm going to earn this as a salary, I could kind of get an idea, but it was all about okay, I arrive, I have euros, but the zloty is the currency there. So how much is euros compared to zlotys? Do I exchange all of it? Where do I exchange it? You know, carrying this cash around, which is basically the only money you have. You have this fear, right? Like, are you going to lose it? Are they going to rob you? Where do you keep it? You don't have a bank account as soon as you arrive, and opening a bank account has certain requirements. So everything was like, I was thinking about these things, and I don't think I ever worried about taxes until
Mm.
I moved to Estonia. So even during that year I lived in Poland, I never really worried about taxes. And it was what you described was in Brazil and not like in the US. I got a pay, I got a payment from the company that I was working for, and I got a pay slip, and the pay slip had a breakdown of how much money went into my bank account and how much money was paid to the government on different kinds of taxes. But I didn't know even kind of what taxes. I knew that I was paying taxes, like I had the copy of the documents, but in a way I wasn't, right? Someone was doing it for me, right? So in that sense, I had yet a lot to mature and grow. So yeah, I wasn't thinking about those things. And if I think about it today, I'm like, we have all these tools that make it easier for us that you don't have to travel, to another continent with only cash,
Oh,
right?
yes. Yes, it's so
So
different now. So
exactly,
easy.
exactly. And so, we managed, it worked, but these are things that I guess would be very different for someone making that move nowadays. But yeah, maybe let's talk a little bit about the anxieties that these tax things bring. I'm going to bring a couple of observations and examples, and then we can dive into your own experience with these sort of US, especially because this US system is so particular and specific, right? And I haven't experienced that. I do save money for taxes, but for different reasons, right? So when I think about the anxieties related to taxes abroad, I think even if you eliminate the word abroad, taxes seem to, in general, generate anxiety because they are synonym for some people with debt. So I think uh, if we reframe what taxes are, we can start having a better kind of relationship with taxes. So um, when you don't trust the system of the country you live in, which is the case for Venezuela, for example, you associate taxes with the government robbing you. Like, why do I have to pay this? Because things don't work. And in theory, taxes are meant for things where you live to work. But if they don't work, then taxes are synonym with being robbed. But when you live in a country like Estonia where things actually work, okay, it's not perfect, there are some things that could be better, but when compared to Venezuela, this is paradise, then you start to see taxes as your contribution as a citizen that lives in a society that wants infrastructure and streets and transportation and health system that works. So I think that's one of the first anxieties. When we don't know what taxes are being used for, we mistrust it. But when we start understanding why they exist, how these systems come to be, what are the things that we benefit from, even if we're not aware of them from the very beginning, then we start to have a different relationship with taxes. So I think that's one layer of anxiety. And
100%.
yeah, right. So but then I think there's another anxiety, which is about the complication. Like we come out of school and into the working adulting life without knowing what are all these things. And then suddenly you get a letter from the government, like you have your taxes due, and you're like, what? What taxes? How does this work? Right? Nobody, I think there should be like, you have your first job. Okay, you go to tax school. This is what you should know about your taxes. This is how they work. This is when you declare it and whatnot. So I guess that's the second anxiety, that even if you recognize their function, then the specifics of what different taxes are, when they're due, where do you pay them, and where not, it's easier or harder in some countries. So maybe you can share a little bit of your experience of how you overcame the whole uh, different tax system in the U.S. compared to Brazil, and how do you experience it now here in Estonia? And also maybe share some anecdotes of how some of the people you knew from that exchange program were like probably doing it differently than you.
Oh, yes. It's a nice topic that you touched the point about we seeing the government as some institution that is not managing very well or running things in a good way or building something new to our country, so we don't see taxes as a benefit. And it's the same in Brazil. It's very similar because we have a lot of corruption or things we disagree. And we are like, why we need to pay taxes then? But tax is an obligation. We have no choice. Anywhere in the world is the same. So we need to be aware. I have seen people telling me, no, I don't want to go there. I don't want to understand. But you have to because it's an obligation. You won't change. If you don't know, it's even worse. What most people don't know is when you don't pay taxes and one day it's finds you, like the government finds you to ask you to pay a fine, you pay with interest. So it's basically instead of you're putting your money to grow for you, the government's putting this debt to grow for them. So as long as it takes for you to pay that obligation, then it grows and grows with interest. And it's basically the same around the world. It's an obligation we must pay, even though it's sad sometimes. We are saying about South Americas is true. I have one example about the previous months. So in
Yeah.
Brazil, we have a payment method called Pix. It's new, it's fast, works really well. It's not an app, it's a technology that just navigates through bank accounts and you can pay people in seconds and it moves money really fast. And the government came with a new proposal of putting a tax on that, and people got together. There was a big movement on the internet and they took down what they said, and they came back, they stepped back, said no, you're not charging this. And they noticed how much it was good for the economy to keep the money moving, right? So if they would put a tax there, maybe it wouldn't work in the same way, or right.
Yeah.
So this is one example about Brazil. So in the same way that the government's failing us, but Brazilians are very creative in building things to be faster, to be accessible for everyone.
Yeah.
And speaking about the US, is taxes are a big thing there. I'm not gonna go to the details because I'm not American, but I noticed that most people like me didn't know that, because just because you're doing exchange program, you don't have to pay taxes. Because when we pay taxes, what is the main word that comes to our head? Retirement. We want to pay taxes. Okay, we pay taxes because we see how the roads are being taken care of, or
Hmm.
if we have public schools. But usually we think
Yeah.
like, I have a safety net for my future,
Yeah.
right? This money is
Yeah.
with the government, but when I retire, I will access part of this money.
Hmm.
But the taxes we are paying as an exchange student was not for this fund, not for the
Okay.
pension fund.
Hmm.
So I think that was my main question. Like, if it's going through my future, well, nice. I can be happy about it, but it wasn't. And
Hmm.
I was frustrated. But even though I knew that was an obligation,
Hmm.
I need to fulfill this obligation because I'm living there. And I also, if I'm living there, I'm taking advantage of some things that the country offers for me.
Hmm.
And then comparing to Germany, in Germany, I was not a European citizen. What I had was just the same as Estonia, which is residence permit. I paid taxes in Germany. Yes, for the time I was working there, I even paid the pension fund. But I'm not in Germany anymore. I don't intend to live there again. How
Hmm.
can I access this money? So there are some system in the European Union which allows you to move these funds to the new country you're living at. There are
Hmm.
some difference about deadlines. It depends what you have done, how much did you pay, or where are you from. But you have the right to request these funds. I request
Hmm.
these funds, and I still working on it to get them to get here to Estonia.
Yeah.
How did I learn that? Deeply searching on internet and speaking to people. Like, I found someone who is already working with that for a long time, who
Yeah.
is like a person who has knowledge in terms of accounting.
Okay.
So that will help me
Tax
because I'm not a
advisor.
specialist in
Yeah.
this. Sorry?
A tax advisor.
Yeah, a tax advisor. I'm not a specialist in this topic, so I need to be humble enough to say yes, I need help, and
Yes.
I need to hire someone's services for that to do in the
Yeah.
right way.
Yeah.
And in Estonia, pretty easy, as you said, digital country. You get here, you get your papers. I start working in a tech company. Everything was settled. I know I'm paying for my pension. And for the first time in life, what is fascinating about Estonia is that if I go through my bank account, even though my pension is going to some type of funds, I can see how much is there and how
Hmm.
much is growing every month if I want to. I have
Hmm.
access to visualize my pension fund,
Yeah.
which is nice. It's a different overview for how it works. It's very accessible for
Yeah.
you to know what is your money invest at, even which fund is that money going
Investment.
towards every month. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a very transparent system and it's a very
Yes.
different experience to everything else we have experienced before, right? When you compare that to, I guess, yeah, Brazil, the US, Germany, even, right? Poland, right? It's one of the things that helps build the trust in the system, that you see the information, that is easy to access, that you can change it, that you can track it, right? And that's something that makes a huge difference in how you relate to paying taxes. But just to stay in the topic of first money moves, right? Very interesting how some of us might be thinking about, yeah, how do I deal with my taxes? So find yourself a tax advisor because taxes are a very complicated thing. And I think that's another layer that adds anxiety to taxes, that whatever you learn about taxes in a country is not going to be the same in the next country. The rules are very different from one place to another. So the best thing you can do is get curious, asking questions, and find the right professionals to help you with that. I, for example, still have to do the task of moving whatever money I put into the system in Poland 17 years ago and move it here. Right? It's probably a small amount of money, but I've worked for that. It is my money, so I have to deal with it. And so yes, that's one thing when you are living abroad, right? Just to summarize it for those of you who are listening and don't get lost in all of our stories and anecdotes and conversation. So paying taxes is something that is going to be vastly different from country to country. There's another scare there, right? That I want us to touch, which is the tax residency. You briefly talked about being a tax residency or a permanent resident or a full citizen, but what would that tax residence mean, right? And basically, briefly speaking, sometimes countries have treaties or agreements, right? And those agreements are meant to make the life of their citizens easier because they also have easy relationships between those countries. So when there is some sort of treaty, you may be a resident of a country and the other one as well, but you might have to pay taxes in only one of those because countries allow you to do that. Or maybe in this country you pay 20% of tax for this particular type of income. In this other one you pay 18%. So maybe you pay that 2% difference because of the agreement that these countries have. Again, it's going to be very specific to the countries that you're living in. The most, I guess, unfavorable situation is when you have to pay in both places, regardless of whether you pay there or no, and there's no agreements at all. Do you have some personal anecdote or experience with these double taxation stories, and maybe what you did to avoid that in a legal way? That said.
Yes, of course. Yeah, a lot of Brazilians come to me like, did you do the exempt in Brazil? Like, how did you finish there? The taxation just said, well, as the rule says, if I don't, basically, there is something called tax exit. If I
Mhm,
don't do this, which is literally officially communicating the government that I'm not a tax resident in that country, I still a citizen. I still have my passport, but I'm not a tax resident. I'm not living there. I need to pay taxes there as well for the amount of income I'm making outside of Brazil.
mhm,
So, yes, I did this officially. And there are some types of accounts that people may don't know that are called it's a bank account for people who live outside of their home country. You have this in Brazil at least. So it means that I will open a bank account and send my document which proves I did this whole process, and they will allow me to have a bank account with some limitations. For example, I don't have as big credit as before, and I can still invest, but it's kind of I invest in some funds in Brazil because now I'm international investor. I'm not a
mhm,
tax resident investor. And when we do this, some things change, but you avoid to pay double taxation, which is most like a nightmare because then you already pay taxes in the country you live in, and then imagine that you have to come with the same income and pay taxes for the other country.
Yeah.
That's what I have done. I know there are a lot of anxiety and fear around that, but I think, if, as I said, as taxes are an obligation, there is no room for us to discuss because we need to fulfill that obligation. So if
Mhm.
that's the way, then we should do. That's how I
Yeah.
think. Very practical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the emotional side of that, you always think in terms of practical things. If that's what it has to be done, that's what we will do, right?
Mhm.
But on the emotional side, you've mentioned the avoidance bit a couple of times, right? How you have people telling you, oh, no, I don't want to go down that path. I don't even want to talk about it. The truth is that a lot of the problems people have with money come from avoiding them. And this is where I love the topic of financial maturity. Actually, I have a little bit on that. If anyone is interested, I've written an article and I have a quiz if you want to find out what's your level of financial maturity. Because I think every level of money, right? We tend to think about money in a very basic way. You just earn it somehow. I need a job. I need to make a living, and you spend it. I need my food. I need my fun. So we know about earning it, sort of. We freak about that too, and spending it, but we also freak about that. But there's actually a lot more than we can do with money, and the worst we can do is avoid it, right? It's a topic, it's a tool that you just need to learn like any other subject in university, and you just need to ask questions and understand. If I don't know, right? Um, where can I find extra? And there's so many tools, right? As you said, you use Facebook forums back in the day. I use Numbio and the information and experience of my siblings. And where the system works, you can also and should trust the official organizations, like you mentioned. Here, I know that if I send an email to the Tax and Customs Board, they're going to reply to me in a short period of time with the accurate data. They're not someone that are there to go after me, because I think there's also that stigma around communicating with the tax people. They're
Oh,
here to get you.
yes.
They just want to put you in jail. They just want to find you and get your money. They're not. They're just people who know the rules, and you can use them to your advantage. Just talk to them, call them, send an email. Again, I know that there's a little bit of trauma when we come from countries where the level of corruption is perhaps a little bit higher than average. But if you move to another country, hopefully it's a more efficient one to the one you move from, and you can trust those authorities and institutions that you can contact them. And in the worst case scenario, there's always professionals. But I wanted to talk on the avoidance side, because that's a typical emotion that gets you just in worse trouble. Because one day or another, you're going to have to face that responsibility. And as you were saying, you're going to have to pay interest, you're going to have to pay fines. So in the end, it's going to be more expensive than just facing and learning the situation. Actually, I think I have a little note here from another topic I was reading about recently, which is financial stress doesn't come from how much you have or lack, but how much you avoid. I mean, I do think some stress from money comes, depends on your situation. If you cannot cover your basic needs, your
Mhm.
stress is going to be from lack of money. But once you meet your basics, once you're able to pay for food, for housing, for clothing, the rest of the financial problems typically come from avoiding them and not being curious enough about them. So it's very interesting how you said that. Yeah, people just want to avoid this. Just don't avoid it. Face it, because otherwise the consequences are going to be a lot worse. Again, we can talk about taxes forever, but that's not the goal. The goal is to talk
Yeah.
about first money moves when we're moving abroad. So yours was on taxes. My first move was about the basics, paying rent, paying groceries, how much is the salary. But maybe let's talk a little bit about moving money between countries now that we live
Yeah.
and still have family, friends, or interest or responsibilities somewhere else. What are some of the tools and types of tools that we can use to move money effectively, and our own experiences with that, and maybe we can share a little bit of those.
No, yes. I think with technology now, we are so lucky that we can do everything in our fingertips. Just typing in. My first experience of sending money was getting in the United States and ask a friend how to send money to Brazil. She said, "Oh, there is this big company called TransferWise, which became Wise, and which is actually Estonia." And I actually apply for a job there and I worked in Wise at some point. It's an odd story, but it's I never thought that I would work inside of a application company, but it's much more than that. They move money between borders, and there are other companies too that we can mention, but this was my first experience. I found very easy just to type there, choose the currency, where the money is coming from, where it's going to, and I see how much I have to pay for a fee as the service. I think these apps help us a lot to move money, and I think we can also take advantage, or some people need to help their family, support their family. We can take advantage of the currency exchange, and yes, I keep using it. I keep using it because I still sending money to Brazil from time to time. Sometimes you
Yeah,
want to send a gift, or there are
yeah,
many reasons for
yeah.
what people who live abroad send money. So
Exactly.
yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. My experience is similar to you, except the first tool I ever heard of was Western Union. And so that was what my parents would use if they wanted to send money somewhere or receive money somewhere, and they had to go to the office, which when I think about it, it's like think about how we do it nowadays. Tap, tap, tap in your phone, and that's it. But yeah, back then you'd go to this office, filling a form, give the money in the local currency. They would do some calculations to exchange it, get the data from the account you were going to send it to, get some documents and confirmation, wait for days, and then finally get it confirmed if it didn't go wrong. But nowadays, yes, we have apps like Wise, and I actually use it every month as well, because I was here in Estonia when the company got started, and there's always that, let's say, familiar element of known factor, like something that is close to us and we know it and we hear of other people using it, and you know a lot of people who work there, you trust it. Of course, nowadays it's a hugely global company, but when I first started using it, it was maybe covering 2, 3 countries, right? So maybe it wasn't possible to send to the country you wanted to send to. For example, nowadays you cannot use it to send money to Venezuela because of the political and economic restrictions. And so I cannot use it to send money to Venezuela. So I use it to send money to Colombia. I have family in Colombia. And with the Venezuela situation, it's been quite an experience because there's been all kinds of solutions popping up, right? Like, I remember there was a time, for example, when I still had a bank account in Venezuela in the local currency, you would find someone where you were, maybe in Estonia, maybe in Europe, who had also a bank account, and there you would transfer them the money to their account here, maybe in Spain, maybe in Estonia, maybe in Finland, and then they would transfer you the money to your local account there, and then you would transfer it from your account to whoever you wanted to. Which I think, in a way, this is probably how many of those tools make it work. We just did it, it was our own system as citizens that needed to figure out a broken system, and then just some businesses are born out of that way of working, right? Like from one account to the other, and then this account to the other. Nowadays, the strangest experience I've had with transferring money to Venezuela, because it's impossible there. I still have all of my family, my husband's family there, all my in-laws live there. And when a system is that broken, you think they were university teachers, they worked all their lives, they did the right thing, and the pension system completely failed them. Because what is worth the pension system today, translated into dollars, is nothing. You cannot live off your pension. It doesn't
Mhm.
matter if you did your good citizen thing and worked all your life and paid your taxes as you had to, and you were back in taxes. It's quite a topic. And you got to the point where, yeah, your pension, it's worth nothing. So they depend on the sons and daughters or grandkids that move to another country and send them money. And so you have to figure out a way. And there's all kinds of solutions. The most strangest one we've been trying recently has been Binance. So it's basically crypto, right? You have to have the account approved. You have to put in or dollars or euros to buy these crypto that is basically measuring the dollar. So it's stable, that more stable than, let's say, Ethereum or Bitcoin, right? It's this particular cryptocurrency that is stable. So you buy that once you buy that, you have to find someone that is ready to buy it from you, and they have their profiles, and they have to have certain, they can set their own rules in a way, like I don't transfer to people with different names, or I don't transfer less or more than X amounts. And so, the first time you're doing that is such a dark, and strange, and different system that, of course, you're scared. In that case, my tip to people is try with small amounts. Like, if it goes wrong, you're not going to be crying over that. You get familiar with how the system works. And then if it works, you give it another try, a little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little bit more. That one has been working now for a couple of months for us. And basically, it's something that you need because the system is broken. When the system is broken, then again, people find their ways with money solutions. And it's incredible because it also shows you how quickly the currency keeps on losing value because of hyperinflation. So if you send an amount this week, the same amount next week, it's worth something completely different. But again, that's a story for another episode. So those are the couple of apps that we have experienced within our family, Wise and Binance. And I think Western Union is something that has been completely losing market. I don't really know the numbers or where it is nowadays, but once you know the fees that you have to pay for transferring money and what are the options available, I don't think you would ever go back to that unless you have no other options. So yes, these solutions have also become um, cheaper and cheaper, and so competition is high, and it's easier basically nowadays to move money between countries. So it would definitely live in different technological times.
Yes, definitely.
All right. So what else do we have in mind? Is there anything else we wanna share with the audience on the topic of our first money moves before we start wrapping up?
Yeah, I think one thing that I also notice about these fintech companies is that also gives me the power of having, like, if I have access to a strong currency, such as euro or dollars, then I can keep the money in that currency in my account and I can travel. So then, as you saying, in Venezuela, I was thinking about that because, like, if prices are changing so much and the currency is going up and down so much, if you have the option of holding that money in a specific currency which is strong and you don't necessarily need to exchange to spend, then it's a good advantage that we can use towards us, like to keep the money in a strong currency. I
Yeah,
do that.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, I still have money from the US that is still in dollars.
yeah,
I didn't
yeah,
change.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
then yeah, I think that's a very smart move and a very creative way of building something new to people. So I don't wonder why these companies are growing so fast.
Yeah, 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 it is. And I am with you also on keeping money and savings in different currencies, especially if you live in an economy that is so unstable. If it's possible for you to keep your money in different currencies and not necessarily in one or two, but maybe even three, yes, do it. I've actually bought British pounds, Swiss francs. Initially just to experiment small amounts, like what happens if I buy and keep it and see how it changes over time. And nowadays, again, with all this uh, um, social way of dealing with economies, which is very unstable, you would even argue whether the US is a strong currency, right? That's also questionable nowadays. You never
Very
know.
emotional to the topic for another day.
Definitely another topic. But do not keep your money under the mattress. That is definitely not going to help you. But yeah, I think we can then start wrapping up. So yes, those are the things we experience when moving abroad and how things have changed. Technology can make it easier. Do your research. Do not avoid and yeah, ask questions. But let's go back then to how money overall is a highly emotional tool because it represents our most basic needs, right? Without money, we can't buy food, we can't have a roof, we can't get dressed. But once we have that, we need to aim at moving higher than that, right? It's not just anymore about food, clothes, in housing. It's also about experience in the world. It's also about education, right? It's also about self-realization. It's about art. It's about all kinds of things. And so we should aim at moving above that, but moving countries resets where we are because we're in a new environment and we get that kind of survival mode in. And so you can be more like Danusia and get curious and ask questions and research. That is definitely one good way to tackle that anxiety. Basically, act, which is why we call this podcast Feel and Act Money. Don't avoid the emotions, but don't let yourself be dragged by them. Uh, Maybe one clear immediate step, Danusia, that you can recommend the people who are thinking of moving or planning their move abroad, and maybe they have some savings, maybe they have those tax questions. Maybe what's one step you would recommend them in terms of their money actions before they go to before they get on the plane to the new country?
Yeah, I'll say something that nobody's expecting. Don't move to a country because of the money. Move to the country that you search for the culture that you believe will fit on you first, because that will play a lot of emotions in your life. You don't feel comfortable if you do, or so, but the money is a tool in this case. The money is a tool that you need to reach your goal, but you should not move just for the money.
Mhm.
That's my opinion. But yes, it is a tool, and I think how to be prepared is once you find out which country you're moving to, learn about the currency, search on people who lives there, talk to them even online on these groups, communities, but also double check the information with the official websites from the government, the source of truth of that country. And then I think this is a good beginning, and the rest is up to you.
All right, great. So let's wrap it up. Thank you so much for hosting this together with me, and thank you to you who have been listening to us. If you enjoyed this episode, stick around. We have a lot of ideas for many other episodes coming up. We want to know which of these topics got you wanting more, right? Is it moving money between countries? Is it taxes? Is it maybe pension? Is it maybe investing? Maybe what are some of the ways to combine your life goals with how to decide about money? Maybe you want to want us to talk about how to save more effectively, or what is behind the psychology of spending. Whatever topic you're interested in, we will be available in feel and act money at gmail.com. We also have our YouTube channel where you will see these posted in our Substack. You can subscribe there to get notified when our second and future episodes come out. And again, thank you so much for listening. And until next time,
Thank you. Until next time. Bye.
bye bye.